Good afternoon, and welcome to Everybody, the podcast which shares stories that highlight people in life that make the world an interesting place, which ultimately ties us all together in unique and wonderful ways. And who am I, you might ask? I would be the head wrap socialite, wife, mom, micro influencer in the fashion and etiquette world. But on this podcast, I will be introducing you to some people who I've had the opportunity to meet along my journey, who have helped enrich me in my life in beautiful
What a
ways,
difference a
and who I
day
hope
made.
will do the same in yours.
24 little hours brought the sun and the flowers where there be rain. My yesterday was blue, dear.
Have
Now
you ever met
ain't
someone
so.
and their very
My
presence
lonely
made
nights
you
are
aware of what
through,
things were
dear.
possible for you?
Since you
Well,
said
today's
you
special guest
were
is my cousin Hortense,
mine.
who was just that
What
type of
a
person in my
difference
life.
a
When
day
I was in elementary
made.
school and middle school, my grandparents would take me, my brother, and my cousin to Virginia every summer for a week, and they let us experience summers in Culpeper, Virginia. This is another place where I got to be in the presence of strong, beautiful women who shared with me legacy and what it means to be connected with family through stories shared, through spoken word, and also stories shared through the gift of song in a beautiful way. And these stories stay with you forever in a pocket of your soul. My cousin Hortense is that person for me. So, welcome, Cousin Hortense, to this program. And I just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Wow. Now you really floored me. I hope I live up to all of that during the interview. This is going to be enjoyable, I can tell.
So, Cousin Hortense, could you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are?
Okay, as Trina has shared, I am a Virginian and I still live in Virginia. I was born here and raised here in this small rural community known as Culpeper, Virginia. It's a county in the Piedmont region of Virginia, which is kind of the very center of the state. I am a 70-year-old African American woman, 70 plus now, really. And I realized, in fact, just a few weeks ago, something that I'm going to be doing soon, which may be leaving here, that I have lived here almost all of my life. Out of my 70 plus years, I guess the time I was away from here was in college and for a brief period living in the DC metropolitan area, Washington, DC.
Mhm.
So I have deep roots here. I love this area because this is the home of my ancestors. My mother, my father, both were born in this same rural community in which I now live. And I have lived and worked from here all of my career. And I am a mother of three adult children. I have eight grandchildren. And I consider myself probably, of all the hats that I wear, I think I'm a good friend. And I have a small circle of really, really close friends that some of whom I've known for 50 plus years or
Wow.
more
Mm.
and have been in my life for that long. And we still are very good friends. So I'm enjoying retirement right now. I am
Mhm.
very engaged more than I want to be in civic and community life here.
Mhm.
My pet interest right now has to do with the operation of a museum that we established a few years ago in my high school
Oh,
here in
wow.
Culpeper,
Mhm.
which was a segregated high school that served all of the African American students in four counties in Virginia.
Wow.
And it
Mhm.
was established in 1948 and it operated until 1968. And it was a 20-year period, but it affected tremendously so many lives in this community that we really consider it a very historic and a very significant piece of history right here. And so
Mhm.
we've established a museum there, and I chair that. We're very excited about it, and we are constantly working there with, I think, some of the best looking exhibits and presentations you could possibly ask for a nonprofit. So that's the most exciting thing I'm doing right now. In addition to, as I said at the onset, preparing to make a transition from here. I live here alone. And that speaks about is a very old community. Our descendants here go back to the mid 1800s
Mhm.
that I know about, and probably and well before.
Mhm.
It's a small African American community. In the center of it is a small Baptist church that's
Mhm.
still here, that's now 140 years old. Also situated beside that, a one room schoolhouse that most of our parents and grandparents, including Trina's grandfather, uh, attended that school. He was one of the last to attend
Mm.
that school, was operating, and he's in his 90s.
Mhm.
And so that piece of history is also important to me. So I'm rooted here,
Right.
so to speak, and I love this place. And so to think about transitioning out of here because the community is not the same, and I am living alone right now, and around me, probably my nearest neighbor that I am familiar with is a good half mile.
Mm.
I can see some houses from here. All occupant these houses, and they were all extended family at one
Right.
point.
Mhm.
So, with the passing of a generation and the last generation here not so interested in returning here or building here, the community has disappeared. And I am also feeling that I need to record the history of this community. And
Mhm.
in fact, when grandfather was here recently, and he returns here to tell you about the family ties,
Mhm.
he makes his way here even in his 90s to attend the funeral of
Right.
friends and relatives because of the strong ties that we have with each other. And that's the kind of tie that we have, even with those who've left here. The importance of returning and reconnecting annually, semi-annually, or on the occasion of celebrations such as weddings and unfortunately now funerals.
Right.
That history is important to me. So when he was here on his last visit, I
Mhm.
interviewed him.
I love it.
And we chatted for 2 hours. Your cousin Ronnie brought him here, and he
Wow.
said, "Well, you've got him here. You better use it. We don't know when he'll come back." And so we we chatted, and I asked him all kinds of questions, and he told me all kinds of stories, which are hilarious. You need to interview him to tell you about his life and the stories of being a young Black boy and a Black man here in this county during his
Mhm.
lifetime. And
Right.
that was the, I guess, mid to, well, not really mid 20th century, or a little earlier.
Mhm.
I toy with it, and every time I think about it, I feel like it's too big. What do I include and what do I leave out,
Right.
and all of that,
Mhm.
and it seems too big for me. So I need to have some conversations with some people about that as an
Right.
idea,
Mhm.
and perhaps they can help me think about it as a manageable project or task.
Well, I love it because
Oh, and I didn't talk it. Interestingly, I didn't talk at all about work, which is a good
okay, tell
thing.
me about work.
Um, which is a
I
really
love
good
you.
thing. So, for the majority of my life, 40 plus years, I was an administrator in higher education.
Mhm.
And I lived here, and that was
Mm.
from Federal College in Washington, D.C., which was a urban city college, to
Mhm.
the University of Virginia, one steeped in tradition where Thomas Jefferson still walks around, the community college, which I was drawn to because I wanted to serve the students who were local and who were rural and who
Mhm.
can't always afford to go to four-year institutions. So I did that here and in Northern Virginia, one of the largest community colleges in the country. And I had an opportunity to manage a campus there and to be an administrator there. So I moved from being a counselor with students and working primarily with African American students to working in community colleges with ultimately with one of the largest diverse multicultural communities
Wow.
you could ever see. So
Mhm.
exciting career, and one in which I made several friends, several students that and professional colleagues that I've mentored and still in touch with. It was a perfect career for me. And after being in college at in
Mhm.
upstate New York. This is another. My life is filled with transitions. I was from the segregated high school in Culpeper that I
Mhm.
graduated. I went to undergraduate school in upstate New York, where I was one of 5 Black students on the
Wow.
campus. And
Wow.
so really illuminated for me the need for African Americans in college administration. It was during the
Ah.
time when Black students were beginning to traditionally white institutions, and
Mhm.
the institutions themselves were not prepared for them. The onus was on the student to adjust
Right.
to the environment, and
Wow.
the institutions were not, I felt, making
Mhm.
the necessary um, kinds of changes to accommodate a new population of students.
How did you help facilitate the transition because you saw such a need in areas where the colleges were not prepared to take care of their African American or minority students?
Well, University of Virginia was my first experience with that because the Federal City College in Washington, D.C. was without a doubt predominantly a Black institution.
Right.
And so that population was totally from the
Hmm.
population where
Right.
Black students were initially brought in very, very small groups and very, very carefully selected
Mm.
to growing groups of them coming in as the doors opened and recruitment efforts changed and were more strategic in bringing African American students to the campus. I worked in African American Affairs, which was a
Okay.
student affairs unit that sought to help bridge that gap,
Hmm.
help students make that transition into that environment
Right.
and to provide support services and a place, quite frankly, where
Hmm.
students could come when they felt the need for just conversations with
Right.
people.
Yes.
And so that was a student services component, but
Okay.
there was always the challenge, and quite frankly, I think it remains, unfortunately, of the academic side of the house
Mm.
also making some accommodations.
Right.
Not accommodations that mean you need to do less than because they weren't equipped or whatever, but
Right.
understanding their needs and how they learn
Right.
and what you could do in your classroom to make those students feel more welcome.
Mm.
uh, is your subject matter inclusive and diverse?
Right.
Do you teach it in a manner that reflects more people other than simply the predominant? Much of what the issue is right now in public schools across the country, that a number of governors, unfortunately, and others
Mhm.
see as divisive and have used in a really, really unfortunate way
Mhm.
to prevent the complete history of a
Mm.
people being shown, to make our educational program more inclusive,
Right.
reflecting all of the people who are there.
Mhm.
And that's quite a challenge. And I think we are finally at a place where there are materials and there are people who are equipped and skilled at doing that and have knowledge that's invaluable to the learning of all students. This
Right.
is not just about teaching African American students, it's about all students the complete culture and history of this
Mhm.
country
Right.
so that they are better equipped when they leave to go out into the world, because that's what education is about. Education is really about acculturation, training you to how to keep the culture going when you get
Ex-
out of here. So we don't want you to leave here being very radical, but we want you
Right.
to leave here understanding the history and culture of this country and where it is at this point in time, and where are their needs? Where can
Right.
you, as a student, becoming an adult and becoming a citizen, how can you make a difference?
Right.
Uh, and if you don't know the whole story, you won't know that. You'll
So
get a
true.
version that's very whitewashed, for lack of a
Right.
better word.
And I assume you're talking about the 1619 project.
Oh yeah, that's a
Yeah.
major one. Yes,
Hmm.
that's being fought
Right.
and ridiculed and debated. It's unfortunate.
And hear what you're saying because it is very important for all of us who are a part of this country. It could be even more inclusive if
Yeah,
everybody, not just one pocket, got a chance to see how they impacted or how uh, past generations affected where we are today. I think if
exactly,
because if more African
exactly,
Americans, more minorities, the whole story was told, we could each see how we played a part in the building of this big country.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
it's important to
yeah.
see
Right
yourself
here in
represented.
Virginia. Yeah, right here in Virginia, one of the most outstanding, I think, efforts at that involves the Montpelier plantation. I don't know if you've
Mm,
heard that story.
mm,
Montpelier, which is actually only about 20 miles from my house in the next county, Orange,
mhm,
is the home of James Madison, the father of the Constitution. And
mm,
that, just like all of them, and there are countless homes in Virginia. We are
right,
considered the birthplace of presidents: George Washington,
mhm,
Thomas Jefferson,
mhm,
James Madison, and including Robert E. Lee. Let's don't leave him out. But he's
yeah,
not a president. But
right,
anyway, we have countless homes here, and all of these lands are considered significant and historic.
right.
Montpelier took the very, I think, unprecedented step of beginning to involve and invite the descendants of enslaved people
Yes.
to participate in that plantation's history, its
Mhm,
foundation that operates that plantation.
mhm,
And those folk became so strong and so powerful that they seemed to be given full say,
mhm,
and full participation in the
right,
operating plantation, and
right,
that the full story be told. And
right.
an outstanding exhibit called The Mere Distinction of Color is there now in the basement, very appropriately so, not
Mm,
by saying it's any less than, because that's where the
right.
people were who
Yep.
really upheld the nation and made sure it operated
Mm,
and allowed James Madison the freedom to do what he did,
mhm,
to write the Constitution, which talks completely about this beautiful state of affairs that
mm,
would become the United States of America without acknowledging at all
right.
the institution of slavery that was existing right on his in his home.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it's a lesson in and of itself. And so there was a huge tug of war there, and
Mhm,
one which received national and international attention
mhm,
when the descendants were rebuffed and rebuked and really kind of shut down until the nation's historical foundations rose up and said, no, this is not right. And now the are partners in
mm,
operating that place and in telling that story. And how aggressive those descendants were. I don't think they really knew who they were dealing with, quite frankly. They
right.
were a very highly skilled and highly trained set of people:
Mm,
lawyers, medical doctors,
wow.
historians, scholars,
Mm,
who were very proud of
right.
their association with Mount Pelion, but
Mm,
simply wanting to have the same kind of input
right.
on that plantation. Unlike Thomas Jefferson with the Sally Hemings
Right.
descendants fought for a long time.
And isn't it something how these descendants of
Uh-huh.
slaves who walked in the shoes of their
Yeah,
ancestors, I always think in the back of my mind that our ancestors are there and they're pushing us forward, saying, "You
yeah,
got this. Stay
yeah,
the course. Our just due is coming." And
yeah.
for all that Black people have given to this country, if you are direct descendants, it is only right that you should have a say into what goes into
The
places.
story. Yeah, you're
Mhm,
part of the story. You're the reason the
mhm.
story even happened in some because you built
Amen.
the place in most
Mhm.
cases. So
Yeah.
and to act like that's not an important piece of what this
Right.
it is almost like insanity. How are you going to write a
Right.
story and not talk about the major players in it? It's
Ex-
that's kind of what this country has done.
Right.
Some of it because they
Mm.
are ashamed of it now, uh,
Right.
and that's okay. And I know that's hard and uncomfortable. To
Right.
be ashamed of it is one thing, but to completely deny it is another.
Correct.
And to act like it didn't exist or we don't want to talk about it. And some of it is guilt, but
Yes.
I don't blame any of the people with whom I'm in contact now for slavery.
Right.
What I do get upset about is if you don't want to acknowledge that it
Yeah.
exists. So you got to
Amen.
own that, and once you own that, then we can move forward. But until you do, we can't move forward because we're stuck with people in denial
Yes.
who have expectations of people that are
Right.
still struggling today with the impact of what slavery did.
Amen.
And they don't want to deal with the differences, the discrepancies, the vestiges of racism still, but the institutionalized racism that still impacts Black people today
Right.
because of long held of practices and ways of doing things that has
Mhm.
never accommodated the fact that we are a people who were freed from 400 years
Mm.
of enslavement.
Mhm.
Uh, so I know that even today, uh,
Right.
I if I sit down, I can probably rattle off ways in which I'm still impacted by that. You say,
Yeah.
"Oh, but you're doing fine. You have a home, you have land." Yeah, fair. Number one,
Right.
let me make sure you know that that's not regular here. So
Right.
it's very, very hard to have a discussion with people when that's not owned, and that's not all I want to talk about. But
Right.
it is there, and
Right.
it is the undercurrent in this country that keeps us from moving forward. That's what's so depressing to me is
Mhm.
that we think we can go forward and just keep it going. You can't
Yeah.
just do that.
No, and you're right about that because even my life, my grandparents' lives, your life, and even though someone on the outside looking in and seeing our life and seeing what we have and seeing the places that we've been, our educational backgrounds, they would say, you have nothing to worry about. But then on a day to day basis, I know as a Black woman, there are spaces that I still go into and I am treated less than. And
Yeah,
it's woven into the fabric of our
yeah,
society. And I think the only
yeah,
way to change that is to acknowledge it, like you said, to teach it to our kids, teach it to their friends, teach it to the world so that this sort of thing never, ever, ever happens again. And slowly but surely, the fabric of which this country was built on will change. We were in slavery for 400 years. It's going to not happen overnight. Like it's going to take at least another 400 years to reprogram everyone,
unfortunately.
by sharing the stories of our ancestors, by sharing our stories. Slowly but surely, the fabric of this country and the fabric of the world will be changed. But until we acknowledge that and we put a
Mhm.
face to it, because it's not something that happened 50 years ago, it's not something that happened 400 years ago. It's like you can look at a lot of our communities, they're still in such disarray because of systems and practices that were in place.
The disparity still exists. Yeah,
Hmm.
in great
Hmm.
numbers. Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
And then what happened in this country is that, as is always shrewdly done,
Mm,
they blame us. Oh,
yeah.
it's because you didn't do this. It's because you didn't do that. It's because you don't want it. It's
Right.
all there for you. Why don't you
Yep.
do that? The door is open. Da 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 da. Not taking into any consideration
Yeah.
what that means really.
Hmm.
goes into that really when you think about all of the things that come to bear upon you going through that open door.
Right.
There's a lot involved there, and you can't
Hmm.
just say, as they said, pull up your own bootstraps when you have no boots. So it's really very glaring for us. We see
Yes.
it very
Yes.
clearly, and
Yeah.
that's what we live with on a daily basis, whether we like it or not. We live with
Right.
it, and as some folk have said, they don't know why we all aren't raving mad
Right.
in this milieu that of this culture that we're in. But such as it is, we still
Right. And we
rise. And that's
and we
what's
still
amazing
ride.
to me is that
Hmm.
we still rise and we still achieve and we still do things in spite of it. I am always inspired, like you were saying, the ancestors are saying, keep going. When
Hmm.
I found people who were enslaved, who had the
Mm.
audacity, as Barack Obama says, audacity of hope, had the audacity to believe that somewhere, sometime in the future, things would be different. So I'm going to
Mm.
keep living and I'm going to keep having my babies and I'm going to keep trying to do what I do
Hmm.
in this kind of enslaved abuse and everything else, bondage. I
Right.
am still able to have some kind of hope or belief that this is going to change.
Mm.
If they could believe that, I
Amen.
I have no choice but to hope and to
That's
be
it.
optimistic. Yeah,
I
I
think
have
that's
to be optimistic. Yeah, you
I
have to
think that's
be.
a beautiful way
I have to
to look
I
at it.
have to think things will get better. Yeah.
Hmm. And I think you said it so beautifully, out of all the things that they've had to endure, years and years being in servitude, being considered less than. And here we are. It's like if they could do it, if they could continue to fight forward and push forward and give us that wind in our sails, there is no other choice that we have but to continue to move forward and and
Yeah.
and make the changes necessary that we can. Eventually, in time, things will change and we will not be considered as anything other than God's children trying to make our mark on the world
Right.
in a positive
Right.
way. So, with that being said, what do you believe your life's purpose to be?
I did not have any idea I was going in that direction at all. At all. Nothing at all would I have thought when I was thinking about what you might ask me. I had no idea, which tells me some things about myself that is still very much in the forefront of my mind, and I didn't know that. So, what do I believe my purpose to be? I
Hmm.
think my purpose is I look at purpose from a spiritual point of view. I,
Okay.
I believe that we are all endowed with gifts and talents
Mm.
almost innately. I mean, you
Hmm.
learn something, but there are some gifts you come here with, and
Mm.
either recognize them or not. But I believe
Mhm.
everybody has a gift. They may not
Mm.
ever, they might spend their entire lifetime and never know it, but you have a gift. So,
Right.
whatever that is, I believe you have that gift and you've been endowed with it in order to fulfill your purpose. So, I
Mm.
think once you really reflect and you
Mhm.
really go in where all the answers are, you
Mhm.
will learn what those gifts are and you'll start to identify them, and they might be small things. Like people always say, I don't have any gifts, I'm not a gifted person. Well, you are. There's
Mhm.
some predisposition that you have about things, about life, about what you almost intuitively know, think, and feel. And
Mm.
whatever that is, that leads you to what you will eventually do to make a difference in this world. And I think that's what your purpose is. Why am I here and what am I supposed to do to make a difference?
Right.
My purpose as I see it is to use my gifts, and my gifts as I see it are my voice.
Mm. Mhm.
And that's my voice for speaking. That's
Mhm.
my voice for counseling. That's my
Mhm.
voice for teaching.
Mhm.
And that's even my voice for singing.
Mm.
So my voice is one of my gifts. The other is my a gift of discernment, and that is of
Mm.
being able to see and how who people are and how
Yes.
they can most effectively work together. So
Mm.
I have held a lot of leadership positions, and I am still doing it now, even in retirement, of facilitating groups of people I find myself in that role all the time. I don't care if it's socially or whatever it is. I am a
Mm,
facilitator. I am looking at all these odd, different skills and characteristics and personalities, uh, finding their strengths and trying to bring that to bear for the good of the whole group.
mm,
And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean,
mhm,
there are times that there's some conflicts that can't be that just cannot be overcome, but uh, that I see as my gift, and that's why I think I've the positions I've held.
yes.
That's why I've held the regular kinds of situations I find myself in. And so I think that's my gift, and I think that's my purpose. My purpose and my own spiritual kind of lesson, because I think I think we all have a lesson to learn while we're here.
Mhm.
Uh, my lesson is to learn to love unconditionally. And
Mm,
I think that has happened for me in all areas of my life. That has happened for me in working with people. That has happened for me in personal relationships,
mhm,
uh, family,
mm,
uh,
mhm,
learning to love. And my battle is always stop judging.
mhm.
It's not up to you.
Uh-huh.
And love.
Right.
Seeing every other human being worthy of love, just as I believe I am.
Mm,
And as God loves them, I'm supposed to love them.
ah,
And so that means forgiving any fault they have, forgiving
right,
anything that I see as, oh, that's just awful how they behave. I don't
mm,
know this. All I
right,
know is they're probably doing the best they can, and I
right.
love them anyway. So learning unconditional love is the other part of my purpose, and learning to trust God, without doubt. And that's a daily thing. So these two things are daily tasks of mine.
Right,
Loving unconditionally, because you don't get it right. I'm telling you,
right.
it's this not
It's
something
hard.
that you get right. This is a growing thing, and it will continue until I'm cold, in the
Mm,
grave. I know that
mhm.
those are two things I will be working on, even as I try to use my gift and fulfill my purpose.
I think
And
that's
hopefully,
beautiful.
fulfilling my purpose in those various ways is going to make a difference in the lives of people, uh, in the lives of communities, you know, family.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
The quote that came to mind when you started talking about discernment and gifts and is that I think Joan Halifax said it is that compassionate action emerges from the sense of openness, connectedness, and discernment
Mm,
you have created. And I think when
yeah.
you offer those gifts to other people, you create
Hmm.
an openness that they're able to
Yeah.
experience God's love in a different way. Like this person's not judging me. This person's, on
Hmm.
their journey and they see me for the faults that I have because I know that I'm human,
Yeah.
no human being is
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
But they also see me created in the image of God. And that's what,
Yeah.
when you say that to me, that's what I see. And I'm like, how beautiful is that to recognize that and to be able to offer that gift to other
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
So, listeners, you can see why my cousin Hortense has always been that person in my life because when we would go to Culpeper, Virginia, and she would offer us over to her home and just be so welcoming. And, people would say, kids know their place, sit down. She was always like, you want to run around? Run around. You want to jump around? Jump around. Like, be you, be free. And I can tell you to come to Virginia and just to witness that, to feel that as a child means something because I know when my kids were little, there were a lot of times where I would say, run around, be free, but those are
Yeah.
things I learned without even knowing, from you because you placed those things in my heart when I was a child. So it was easy
Oh,
to give those, to my
well,
kids. Thank
that's
you.
part of my reluctance about leaving here, because
Mm,
that's what I gave to my children. The
yeah.
reason I came back here to live, I gave that to my children, and I gave it
Mhm.
to my grandchildren. And when they
Ah,
come here, that's what they look for. They
yeah.
they know when they come here, it's theirs. And they
Yeah.
can do what they want. They have the freedom on
Yes.
this acreage right here to be crazy, and nobody's going to say anything to them
That's it.
within reason.
Yeah.
They have that freedom, and they have a sense of ownership. And that
Hmm.
makes such a difference for
Yeah.
people when you have had a sense of ownership of something,
Yeah.
and you're not answerable to anybody else for this right now.
Mm.
That kind of gives you an attitude about life, and you don't realize it. Just like you're saying, my
Yeah.
kids have that. My son comes back here all the time, and when he brings his son, he says this place is just freedom for him. It's
Mm.
freedom, and I come here feeling that I can do what I want and I can say what I want. And even as a kid growing up, I had that freedom. I moved all around this nation freely,
Yes.
without being fearful, without having any whether people cared about me or not. And
Hmm.
that's a sense that I was hoping they could have, because I had that as a child.
Yeah.
And so uh the thought that you wouldn't have that growing up was foreign to me.
Hmm.
So I wanted them to have that. But now that I'm going to eventually leave this place, we've got other
Hmm.
property here, but I'm going to leave this place. I haven't said that to my grandchildren yet. I know they are probably of all going to
Yeah.
be most disturbed and distressed
Yeah.
by that. Um,
Yeah.
so uh, yeah, so we're still in that place in my head, trying to detach and think about
Yeah.
all the ramifications of a move. But you
Right.
were talking about this openness. That's
Hmm.
something that I know I deal with personally all the time.
Hmm.
I have possess a doctorate in counselor education,
Hmm.
and I go places, and there are people who use that all the time. You're Dr.
Right.
Hinton, you're Dr. Jackson. Um, and I'm always saying to people that that is totally unnecessary. I am not in an environment where that is important right now.
Hmm.
And at the University of Virginia, when I was working there, and that's where nobody, because UVA has a medical school,
Hmm.
nobody is called a doctor but the medical doctors.
Mm.
Uh, you might be called a dean, and I was a dean, so I was called Dean Hinton, I wasn't used to that doctor business. And
Right.
so when I went to the community college, that was a really big deal for them. And
Mm.
so they were always doctor this, doctor. And
Right.
so I know that Black people are very proud of that for me.
Yes. Hmm.
And so they use it all the time. But
Mm.
one of the things I constantly get from them is, you don't act like that.
Hmm.
And I know that there's obviously an expectation that
Right.
because I have achieved that, that somehow I'm on some different level
Right.
when it
Right.
comes to interacting with people. And
Hmm.
I have always made it an effort to be sure that people know that that does not change you. You
Right.
change because you want to, but
That's it.
the degree in and of itself doesn't do anything to you that
Hmm.
sets you apart from other people. Uh, Now, if we were going to talk about academic credentials, yes,
Right.
it would set me apart. But
Hmm.
in the course of living every day,
Right. Right.
I
Right.
still have to eat. I still have to rest. I still got to get up and do the same things you do every day,
Right.
trying to stay healthy and safe. So
Hmm.
it is not setting me apart as a person. Just trying to communicate that to people
Hmm.
for me sometimes. So, but yeah, that's part of that. Also, that openness and people wanting to, they categorize you, and
Yes.
I'm telling them, do not do that. That's not what this is about.
You look at, some of the people within our community, like you said, who are proud that you have achieved this, which was only at some point just a mere dream. You
Right.
could achieve this. And you allow them, you allow us to come on that journey with you. I know there are different hobbies and different interests that you have. And if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the hobbies and interests that you have, what things do you do to give yourself that peace within your soul when you're having like a hectic week?
Probably, above all other things, I'd have to say music is a sanctuary for me. Music is a balm.
Mm,
Music can change me in a few minutes.
hmm
If it starts, it can either make me very happy, it can either make me very sad, or it can put me in a reflective mood, it can make me dance. But it changes the atmosphere for me. When I find myself in certain moods, I just have to turn it on and
mm,
select the pieces I like, or select a song that's appropriate to how I'm feeling. If I want to really have a pity party and talk about the blues, I can play the blues
mhm,
and I'll
mhm,
listen to it for a while, and then if I want to give praise and thanksgiving and want to celebrate God and worship, I put on some gospel music, praise
mm,
music.
mhm,
If I want to meditate, music that will calm me right down, let me sit for a while and just chill. So
mm,
music is a sanctuary for me, and singing
mhm,
is also a sanctuary for me. Uh, it's just good for me. I know that, and I don't do enough of it, but yeah, it's good for me. The other thing I like reading. I love reading a really good book, one that I don't want to put down, and one that I'm angry if anybody calls me. One of those. I love that. That I can't wait to get to and just enjoy and so much appreciate. Just the time to delve into it. I realize that I'm an eclectic person in so many ways.
mhm,
It's just,
mhm.
I mean, everything. Nothing is you could pigeonhole and say this is it. I
Right.
love I love African American authors. I love
Okay.
James Baldwin.
Ah,
One of his most memorable for me was Just Above My Head.
mhm,
Love that book. I love Toni Morrison because I
mm,
like people that weave in the spiritual and the magical
yes.
into their works.
Mhm.
Um, Sue Monk Kidd, who did The Secret Life of Bees.
Ah,
I've read about
yes.
4 or 5 of her books. I
Uh-huh.
love her books. The last one I read of hers was called The Book of Longings. I loved it
Ah,
because she takes scriptural text and she brings it to almost like, well, what if? Well, we say
right.
this, but suppose it was really like this. And I love that kind of writing. And then I love just having a book of short stories. So I love a wide range of books, and it's just. I think the most recent one was a strange little book that I picked up at Barnes and Noble when I was in Florida called Meredith Alone,
Okay, I'm
and
writing
I
this.
had no idea about, except I read the cover, and it was about a woman who was what do you call the phobia where you're scared to go outside? For a
Agoraphobia?
number, I think that's it.
Okay.
And she had that, but the story revolved around how she got to that place.
Ah,
And that was one heck of a story. Idea it was going to go into all the areas that it went into. But I love that. So that's the last novel I read. That's about a month ago. Prior to that, I read a book called Black Cake, and I can't
mm,
think of the author, but I
okay.
loved that book. I think that those are the ones I've read most recently.
Since you told me about Meredith Alone, I've written that down. The Book of Longings by I'm like, because I love The Secret Life of Bees, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
Susan Kinsey. I'm gonna write her down because we're about to travel. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna read those books. I'm like, this is
she had
perfect. And
another
then
one called she had another one called Mermaid Chair.
perfect.
Both
Look,
of them were good.
see, and for those people who who know me, they know that all you have to do is tell me a book. So I'll go to Barnes and Nobles today and add this to my bookshelf. So I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to ask you about your love of singing because I love your voice.
Mhm.
Love your voice. And I would say, how did you discover your love for singing?
Well, singing, pretty classic for African Americans. I started in the church choir.
Okay.
Uh, I'm as I said, I'm Baptist, and
Hmm.
my uncle was the choir director when I was a child, and
Hmm.
I started in the choir probably preteen,
Hmm.
and was in the choir until I went away to college.
Hmm.
And when I went away to college, I mean, and I loved music. A collection of albums and 45s that you wouldn't believe that I should have let go of ages ago. So I was big into music growing up,
Hmm.
following all the groups and all of that, and I could sing along with all of them.
Mm.
Um, and I'm surprised now when I can't remember anything else. I can sit here and the song comes on and I know every word.
Isn't something?
So when I went to college,
Hmm.
uh, I was invited to join a rock band,
Oh my
and I
goodness.
did.
That's
And there
awesome.
was a band, and we named ourselves Hardware. Okay.
Love
And
it.
I was for a while, I was the only girl in the group. And
Okay.
it was four white guys that went to school with me, and they
Okay.
were musicians, and one guy was a singer.
Wow.
And we became a real close knit group of folk.
Hmm.
And we would play for college functions and got so we got big enough to go play at little dance places around the college. We were out in a rural area, and I
Hmm.
think we went into Rochester once or twice and played. Uh,
Cool.
and so I sang with that band for I guess 3 years. I don't think I did it my first year there.
Okay.
Third and fourth year in college, I sang with that group. We pretty much dissolved as folk graduated and went on
Right.
about their business.
Right.
Um, my first time ever thinking about doing that. I had no idea I'd do that. And so coming back home, I
Hmm.
sang again in my church choir. Whenever I was here, I would
Okay.
do that. I became a soloist in the choir. And
Mm.
from that, I became a soloist for so many things, weddings, and funerals as well,
Hmm.
Uh, so I that kind of just grew kind of on its own. It wasn't anything I was aspiring to do at
Right.
all. But I always had an interest in jazz music. Oh, I can't even tell you what year this was. I'd have to look back in emails or something and try to find this out. There was this workshop that a girlfriend told me about. She said, "There's a jazz singing workshop
Mm.
that they do in the DC area." I was still working then.
Okay.
And friend went to it and she thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's really great. You go through this little workshop for about 6 weeks, and then you get to sing in a club.
Oh my goodness.
All of you who are in the workshop will learn X number of songs and you'll get up and sing. So
Oh.
I went to this workshop
Okay.
and sang in a club in DC when we finished,
Wow.
and just loved it and was asked to come back and do it again. And so
Wow.
after a while, I went back and did it again.
Hmm.
And then I sang in this really, really nice jazz club in DC. I mean, one of the top notch places. And
Wow.
that's where we all came out and sang, and my family and friends all came. And that was just wonderful. I loved it.
Okay.
I never had the confidence that I was exceptionally good.
Mm.
You know, I knew there were people who I thought were good,
Hmm.
and I don't think I came anywhere near them. Though people would say, "Oh, you're really good. You should do this. You should do." No,
Hmm.
I in comparing myself to what I thought was good, no, I don't.
Mm.
Maybe if I had the kinds of musicians or whatever around me, or
Hmm.
someone who could have really worked with me or whatever, maybe that could have happened. But
Hmm.
I never felt that way. So I never pursued it passionately, like I
Okay.
got to do this. No, I
Right.
didn't do that. I had enough when I had those two little experiences. Like
Wow.
that was
I.
just great for me. I loved it. And then when in retirement, this is my last part of this.
I
My
love you.
girlfriend and I decided we would go to Florida for our winter retreat. So we've
Okay.
done it for five. This year was the sixth year. We had to stop for the pandemic, but
Okay.
we would go to the same place in Florida.
Hmm.
And when I went there, we went out one night to a jazz club, and they had
Okay.
well, that turned into me singing once a week down there for open mic night. Had a
Oh,
great
that's so
time with them.
cool.
So that was so cool. And every year when I'd go back, I'd go down there. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years. So that was fun. That was
Oh,
enough for me.
that's
And
oh,
so that was really fun. And I had a kind of a counselor therapist who told me once, you need to do that because it's so good for you.
yeah.
And I said, well, singing in the church choir is going to have to do it because I'm not anywhere where I can go, and I don't have any musicians around me here where I can really do this and get into it and all that. So that is a passion of mine. Well, it's something I really enjoy doing, not
Right.
a career passion
Okay.
or I want to record passion. I don't have that. He's asking me, why don't you record something? Because I don't really, okay. So that's kind of where that is.
Well, first of all, you could totally make a career out of it. And I I will tell you this story. And I don't know if you ever knew this story. Well, when my mom would come down to Virginia, and this is once I moved away, and I think the boys were probably little, and maybe we didn't go down to, Culpeper as much as we did when I was younger. But she would say, okay, we're going down to Culpeper in August. And what do you want me to do? My first thing was always like, if there's a way for you to get a tape recorder into the church service, and if you could tape cousin Hortense and just bring me just a piece back. And
Oh,
she would always go into church, and she would have her recorder, and she would record it, and she would send me in the mail these tape cassettes. And I always looked forward.
what?
Yes, yes, yes. And I always looked forward to these packages that she would send, and I would just sit there and just listen to you sing. You have a
Wow.
gift and the ability to just move a person's soul with your voice. And I would always, I get emotional, but I would always play these cassettes and listen to your voice when I needed a piece of home. So, and my mom would, yeah, sneak in the church, and she would record you so that she
The
could send
little
me.
sneaky recorder. Okay.
So,
Wow. This
yes.
is really something.
So even though I wasn't able
Oh,
to make it, like, she would still allow me, I always felt like I would be there in spirit, even though it would be, weeks after that she would send me these cassettes. So with that being said, I would like to know, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you mind singing something for me and for
something.
the listeners? Of course,
So,
I'm gonna put it in the guise of the for the listeners, but it's really for me.
what genre?
I would love for you to sing a jazz song.
Okay. We'll do what a difference a day makes.
Okay.
What a difference a day made. 24 little hours brought the sun and the flowers where there be rain. My yesterday was blue, dear. Now I'm part. My lonely nights are through, dear. Since you said you were mine, what a difference a day makes. Skies above can't be stormy. Since that moment of bliss, that thrilling kiss, it's heaven when you find romance on your menu. What a difference a day makes. And the difference is you.
Mm. Thank you, cousin. Oh, that is so, oh, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I sang that at my cousin's wedding. And
Oh,
her husband, every time I'm around him, he goes, "Will you sing our song, please?"
I love it.
And I'm
I love it.
times I need to sing this song.
I just have to like, again, it's like I love these moments because it's like I'm just gonna sit in this moment and really let my heart and my spirit just soak it in. Just what a beautiful gift that you have. And thank you
Well,
for
thank you.
sharing it with
Thank
me,
you.
with the listener. I would like to say, Cousin Hortense, that you are one of those people in my life who mean so much to me. And I also want to say that anytime I would come to Virginia, it makes a difference, even if it's one of those moments where you don't realize that you're planting seeds in people's lives, but you have always planted seeds in my life that I had no idea at the time that you were planting. And you allowed me to be a better version of myself when I was little, even till now, because I find a lot of those things that you allowed me to experience by coming to your home and sharing your gift of song and just the way you interacted with the elders in the community made a difference in my life. And you're
Wow.
right. What a difference a day makes. I mean, that for me encompasses so much because what a difference those summers made in the life of a child who
Mm,
needed that. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much.
mm.
Um,
Blesses me. It blesses me, and I'm trying not to cry.
mm,
It blesses me because you are such a beautiful spirit. You always have been. Your smile and your eyes have always told me that you were going to be something very, very special. To
mm,
know that I had any role in
mm,
shaping
mm,
blesses me, fills me with gratitude. To know that my gift is my gift
mm,
and that my
mhm.
purpose is being fulfilled.
I am so grateful and thankful to God for the gift of family, gift of you. Thank you,
Thank you.
cousin. Thank you. And thank you for this gift of your time as well.
Well, you're
Yeah,
most welcome. I learn things about myself every time I do this kind of thing.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
More things. I reveal things to myself.
And that's the beauty of life. You know, the evolution of who we are and the journey still
Mhm.
continues.
Yes. And I wish you well with this project and all of your podcasts and what you've been doing and continuing to do. All the best. All the best. You will be
Thank you, cousin.
this is a great gift to others too.